everybody. Welcome to Playtime Round 3, The Christmas Spider. I'm James Danner, one of the founding directors of production company AMANDA+JAMES, and I am delighted to have Clint and John here, the composer and librettist for our latest collaboration with the American Opera Project, their new opera, The Christmas Spider. So, I would love to know how you came across this story.
This story came about from way too much turkey on Christmas Day a year ago. 2 years ago now, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, 2 years ago I went upstairs after eating too much turkey, just kind of in a stupor, and I decided to Google interesting Christmas customs around the world just out of boredom, and I came upon the idea that in the Ukraine they always put little beautiful crystal spiders on their trees for good luck. And then I found out there's a centuries-old story that goes along with that about a poor family who invites, they bring in a tree and there's a spider who lives in it, and they end up having a wonderful evening and lots of good fortune because of her. And so it just came from there.
It feels so ancient. I think so many of us are maybe a little arachnophobic, but I think about sort of all the weaving fairy tales from all over the world that have to do with spiders. So it's interesting, a new take on Christmas for sure. Could you tell us a little bit about the actual plot of the opera?
Yeah, so the actual plot is there are a pair of siblings, Dmytro and his little sister Zoya, who live in a cottage with their poor widower father, Fedorov, and they had nothing to eat, they had nothing for Christmas, and their landlady, Miss Petrina, has said, you have 5 days to pay or you're all going to be forced out into the cold. And the children decide that even though they have no gifts and nothing to decorate it with, they want to bring in a little tree.
Right.
So their father goes out, just like in Charlie Brown, and brings in this little sapling that's falling apart, and then this gigantic spider is on the branches, and the children are very afraid, and he says, we have to be kind. It's the holiday season, we must be kind. Mm-hmm. So they end up decorating the tree with pine cones and sticks and stones that they're going to use as gifts, even though they're very poor. They're like, we can find joy in these things.
Yeah.
Then they go to sleep, and when they wake up the next morning, the sun is shining through the window, and the spider has spun strands of web all around the tree that sparkle in the sun. And they think, oh, it must be a wonderful miracle. This spider is good luck. And then the daughter finds a gigantic diamond on the ground too. So it couldn't be better. But then there's a knock at the door, and it's the landlady back.
Right.
She's come again, and this time she says, I've come back to find a diamond that fell out of my earring. Have you seen it? And the father and brother are quiet and just holding their tongues, but then the little girl holds out the diamond and says, I want to be kind.
Right.
And the landlady is so touched by this, she decides to invite them all to her mansion to enjoy her gigantic feast that she has for Christmas. And as they're leaving, the little girl who was so scared of the spider goes up to the tree, lets it crawl into her hand, and says, you have to come with us to enjoy this wonderful day.
So I'd love to get into a little bit grounding us in the excerpts, the musical excerpts we're going to hear from this workshop. The first is the opening scene. If you'd like to set us up.
Yeah, it's the opera opens with Dmytro and his sister Zoya basically killing time to stay warm until their father comes home.
Right.
And so, they have no toys really except for acorns and cups, and Zoya wants to play a game that she's made up called The Tiger and the Drummer, which is her basically playing on whatever household items she can find as loudly as possible to scare her brother away.
One more time. No, please. I said no. Dmytro, Dmytro, Dmytro. All right, Zoya. Final round. Here we go. Sly as a fox, safe in his lair. The treasure is hidden supposed to be tiger or drummer? You're tiger. I'm me. Tiger is big and scary. Drummer is little and brave and pretty. Please, go over there.
Roar, I'm the mean, hungry tiger.
Do it red, big and scary.
Roar, I'm the mean, hungry tiger, and I've come back to this village. I will eat more chickens, more sheep. No one can stop me. Roar! What's that? Roar! Who are you?
I'm the drummer.
Stop that noise!
You gotta kick it and keep go away.
Stop running, you two!
I'll play faster, I'll play louder.
Roar!
Go back to your cave, pretty tiger, and never come back.
Who's that?
Papa?
He wouldn't knock. He lives here.
Yeah, it's just such a pleasure watching them record it. Fabulous siblings, actually, which is amazing. Just a breath of fresh air and a smile in these otherwise very stressful times. But you know, speaking of that, you wrote a lot of the score during quarantine.
Yes.
What was, I mean, I have not gotten as much done as I'd like to do in quarantine, and here you turn out an opera, so has that just been like a really, talk me through that process.
Well, actually, I had the coronavirus in March.
Oh my God,
Literally
okay.
the day that we were supposed to quarantine is the day I showed my first symptom.
Oh yeah, okay. Wow.
So I was sick then, and then when I started feeling better, because you had the whole libretto done by then.
Because there was a reading.
There was a reading
yes,
last year, yeah,
right,
that AOP did.
Oh, so that was
December
the
of
first thing we did.
2019. Yeah, okay. Well, you know, it's a multi-stage process, of course.
So I had the libretto there. So when I was really, really sick, I just read the libretto and did some sketches and stuff. Then when I started to feel a bit better, I don't know what happened. I just started writing it, and I did not stop. And then we had some meetings, you know, with Matt and Mila about, because they wanted to do kind of something like this,
Right,
you know,
yeah.
during this time. And this was back in March. So I was like, I think I could get half of it done by then,
Right.
not knowing what I did. But I remember just waking up every day and running to my keyboard and computer to work on this.
That's awesome.
Because during these horrible, sad times where, you know, you can't see your friends or family, for a lot of that.
And it's sort of open-ended as well, which is, oof.
Just having something, like to put joy into something, even though you're not feeling joy,
Absolutely.
was just cathartic.
I mean, that's incredible. That's a tough thing to do, you know, to find that source. But I think it's a very high compliment to your libretto, which is excellent. That it's inspired that. Is that a normal process for you to just sort of get in the zone and just keep going, or is it a little more episodic normally?
It depends on the piece, but there have been other cases where I've been like that, and other cases where it depends on the piece, but usually with your librettos, it's like I'm inspired by it. And usually we talk a lot through it, and by the time I get the libretto, I know what I need to write.
Totally.
He has to write fast with me because he knows I call every day. How's it coming?
Good. Hey, you know, it's good to have a taskmaster.
Damn, I just
that
sent it to you yesterday.
You know that much. Well, tell us a little bit about your process writing the libretto.
This one also came really, really quickly because as soon as I sent him the carol and, you know, just kind of, because the carol came before Spider.
Okay.
I just felt, okay, let me write this thing and see how it goes. But the fact that he was so interested so quickly, I thought, let's just go for it. Let's just see
Right.
what happens. And, you know, like he was saying, writing for children is really tough because you don't want to write for children, but you want to write in a way that includes them
Yeah, absolutely.
in the greater story. And it happened really, really quickly
Mhm.
because the legend has, based on what region you're in, it has a different variation.
Okay.
So there's no landlady. It's more about the love of Christ is what brings the spider to spin all this. And I
Yeah.
really wanted to make it more universal and
Yeah,
secular as best I
Absolutely.
could. So adding the character of Miss Petrina and the landlady coming
Mhm.
in, it upped the stakes in a very different way and made it much more of a human story rather than a magical story where
Yeah.
the children learn through doing what's right,
Right.
instead of being saved by a
Deus ex machina.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
Exactly.
Totally. No, I mean, there's a lot, it's very redolent of the Christmas Carol in that regard of sort of her being inspired. But I love, again, that it's not some ghost.
Yeah,
that
no, they
affects
find it
It's
within
the
themselves.
Real, exactly, the real exchange. That's really quite touching. So, I mean, it sounds like in this particular instance, it was very much words and then music.
Mhm.
Is that normal for your collaboration?
95% of the time.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, in the Copper Queen, the
Mhm.
major love duet, I think is the only time in our entire collaboration that Clint has ever said, "Here's the music, you set this."
Okay.
Because he found it, and I was like, okay, that's fine. So we usually go words first, but we can go either way.
Interesting. Wow. Okay.
That was like, we had the first workshop of the Copper Queen,
Mm-hmm.
and we were there, you know, in Arizona, and
Yeah.
they were doing the workshop, and I went to a practice room just to let off steam or whatever.
Yeah.
And then I wrote the theme, inspired by, you know, just
Voila.
the workshop and everything.
Yeah.
Like, and then on the way home, I remember writing it down on the plane, like the notes. Then I recorded it and I sent it to John. I'm like, this is the theme. Said it.
Oh, I love
And
that.
put words to it. And that's, I think, one of the only
That's
times.
the only time I can think of, yeah. It
Yeah.
was
So
hell.
that'll. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's.
that was a little trouble. Like, you went through a lot of
Yeah.
versions of that.
Totally. So this next scene we're going to see is Fedorov's aria. Set us up.
Yeah, so in this aria, the children have gone outside to collect gifts to put under the tree that they find in nature. And the landlady, Miss Petrina, has come back demanding that he pay the rent, which is
Mhm.
late. And Fedorov explains to her that they have hit absolute rock bottom. They have no money for food, for clothes, for anything.
Yeah.
And he can't sell firewood in the village, so he begs her, please don't throw us out. These kids only have me, and this is all we have. And please just give us a little bit more time. And I think there's some musical stuff as well.
I mean, the first scene that you heard is just trying to capture the Christmas spirit.
Yeah.
But I also wanted children to be exposed to real operatic singing, real
Mhm.
operatic forms. So this aria is like a typical Puccini-esque
Yeah, absolutely.
aria with
Yeah.
big vocal writing. And I'm hoping that when a child hears this, it's maybe the first time they're hearing opera,
Yeah.
will affect them like the same way it affected like most of us. Like, wow, what is this?
You're right of all that. I have no idea. What can I do?
You can pay.
If it were only me, I'd say lock me out. But not those two. Those two are why I leave at dawn with my dull axe. In town I'm undersold by men with saws. They scoff when I ask for work. If I sell half, I'm lucky, but not lucky enough. I want more for those two. Better food, a bigger home, school and proper coats, toys and candy bring cake. So I scrape for crumbs. If it were only me, I'd say lock me
Fortune's
out.
frowned on me as
The
well.
bite outside is nothing when I hear their bellies growl.
You've no idea at all.
I'll gladly suffer if it means they eat until they're
You've
full.
no idea at all.
Don't force us out.
Absolutely.
I'm doing what I can, but I swear I will do more.
What else could possibly?
I like when I think about Ukraine and Christmas and things like that, I have these sort of visions of like the Snow Maiden and sort of Rimsky-Korsakov. It's a little bit, drawn in my brain in this very specific sort of 19th century way with the sort of diadem and all of this stuff. And it reminds me that this opera is being done sort of in two versions. One that's going to be more of an animated or storybook. I mean, can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, it's really influenced by reading Rainbow and how in that show they would have these full illustrations that the camera would really pick up all of the really, really tight details of them with an amazing narrator. And so what we decided is to use that template and have some beautiful narration with music from the piece as we have these incredible illustrations by Ashley Solomon, who is illustrating the opera for us.
Wonderful. Yeah. No, I've seen some of Ashley's sketches and they're fantastic. So I'm really looking forward to that. Brings me to another point that I feel very passionately about, this idea that content for children, so to speak, that sort of patina has, in my somewhat limited experience, but nonetheless, experience in recent years is really just feels very, pandery in a way. Like it's really geared towards very specific, like sort of trying to say like, well, this is for 3.5-year-olds and not for 4-year-olds or whatnot. And I feel really, really very fortunate that at least growing up, I was exposed to so much stuff that was kid-friendly, kid-inclusive, I think is maybe the phrase I would use, that was really sophisticated, that even watching as an adult, there's so many more layers. I mean, think of all the older Disney musicals, naturally. But even before that, the stop-motion animation, Rudolph's and things like that. So I mean, that feels like that's where this wants to sit.
That's exactly what we planned, because we were talking about how do we make this appeal to kids, but also their parents and grandparents, because ultimately holiday shows should be about families coming together and experiencing it.
Yeah.
And we were like, every Christmas, what do families like to do together? And they love to watch Charlie Brown Christmas and The Grinch and Rudolph, Frosty,
Christmas Carol.
Christmas Carol, all of these things.
I saw that on stage for the first time
and
last year.
Amal and the Night Visitors too.
Of course.
And what they all do is they all have a very simple story, but that is ultimately uplifting with lessons for both parents and children with beautiful music.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
that's what we were
I mean, we didn't want to break the mold. We wanted to, put ourselves in the mold. 'Cause that's what we love. We love those stories, and we wanted to write one of those, kinds of.
Yeah,
operas.
absolutely. All right, so this next scene is Miss Petrina's aria. Once again, give us a lowdown.
This is an easy one.
All right.
She's just basically complaining how her life is so difficult, with the most banal things, like, oh, my cat has kittens, my scissors don't work or stolen or whatever. But this was the one piece that I was looking most forward to composing. Because I just wanted to write a crazy lady soprano going nuts kind of aria.
Yeah.
It's fast, it moves, and I remember saying, we need more words, because,
Which is the only time he's ever asked me for more words.
he's like, we are eating up words. I'm eating up words. It has to be I wanted to write like a patter, funny, crazy song, and I also wanted the kids to hear a real soprano for the first time. And maybe the cliche soprano, I just threw in a cadenza in
Absolutely.
there. But that's what, that's the crazy soprano lady that kids think are, they think it's funny, or they can relate to it, or they love it, or they'll hate it. But that'll be something that'll grab their attention.
Definitely. I mean, I think everyone's attention gets grabbed. It's such a clever interpolation of a lot of those bel canto stereotypes into a character who I think we all know, who's doesn't have any real problems, and so everything becomes a big problem.
We always say that it's like if you took Cruella de Vil and put her in Dr. Zhivago. That's who this would be.
Wow, that's a mashup I want to see, for sure.
Just give a bit longer.
I already gave.
Please, you've been so patient.
Not today. Fortune's frowned on me as well. You've no idea at all. My cat has had her kittens. The drapes are now in shreds. Cook spilled claret on the rug. The floor creaks in the hall. You've absolutely no idea. No idea at all. There's leaking in the parlor. The piano needs a tune. The maid lost my scissors when there's so much left to sew. You've absolutely no idea. No idea at all. My groundsman left with the grocer's girl, so the garden's good as gone. Great Aunt Nellie is still with me and still incontinent. Nothing you do is good enough. She has to let me know. I run the house all by myself while she yells that I'm too slow. She never sees the dirty looks I get when I'm in town. When I do what must be done. Now I come here and you want more time. Oh, I forgot. My cuckoo clock fell off the wall. It makes an open grave look like a holiday. Trust me when I say you've absolutely no idea. No idea.
So I'm actually really interested to know what balance sort of your research process was, like how much was looking into Ukrainian music and styles versus the Christmas oeuvre, as it were, carols and all the pop music that we have, and other Christmas operas. What was that process like for you? Were you like, no, this is going to be my addition to that?
Well, I did a lot of research, especially since John wrote the carol first. So I had to set this carol, so I researched carol.
Right.
And most sacred carols, were modal in texture and had just about an octave and a half for the vocal line.
Yeah.
So I used that as a source material, and then I also wanted it to be similar to modern songs, not modern, but like Bing Crosby,
Right.
like
Yeah.
that.
The sort of
Even
golden
Mariah
era.
Carey,
Yeah.
anything, any Christmas
course.
song has a special harmonic motion or a harmonic shift in it or modulation, and there's always something very special about a Christmas song. It's not just the basic standard song.
Right.
There's always a little spark of something special. And as a composer, when you're writing something, you have that aha moment, and then that's the thing that's quote unquote special, at least to you. In your
Right.
taste. So that was one thing that I knew I had to incorporate into the carol. And then from the carol, for the Ukrainian music, there's a lullaby. So John wrote this lullaby as well. And the only thing I could find that was Ukrainian with like just the scales that they use
Yeah,
and the
absolutely.
modal textures.
Very specific sound. Yeah.
So I didn't want to just have a whole a whole lullaby with just that scale.
Yeah.
So I just used it for one of the sections to make it sound like that.
Totally, to ground us, and really very effective in doing that.
You, my own.
And I your own too.
Tell me, my own, what's left now to do? The wheat has been tied, the washing is dried, the wood has been cut, the front door is shut, your supper is through. What's left now, my own? What's left now to do? Just kiss me, my own, and I'll kiss you too.
I mean, in my experience, particularly as a producer, with a limited budget, to be honest, you get very inventive with where opera gets done. And the consequence is that rather than having this incredibly, moving but allegorical experience hundreds of feet away from this small person making a huge noise, the visceral feeling of that sort of 2800 hertz resonance that opera singers work so hard to master and maintain, it's so many people have come up to me after performances like that in galleries and outside and in a parking lot, whatever, saying like, I have never been to the opera before for whatever reason, the sort of temple of culture is intimidating or whatnot, but to have that really incredible experience, the kinetic empathy of that is really transformative. So yeah, I mean, I'm here for that.
That's another reason why this has been scored for just 4 players, and it takes place in one room, so that this can be done in virtually any size theater or in a church or in different smaller places and venues. It can be done at a very intimate scale too.
You heard it here first. That's excellent. So I applaud you for keeping the audience in mind as well in writing that. It's not something that all artists do. That's for sure. So finally, we have the carol, which is the first thing you wrote. Tell us about this moment.
This is really, I think for me, the cornerstone of the whole piece, because it's the only thing in the opera that really can be taken out and used on its own. It stands on its own. And it's sung by a group of carolers who are passing by the cottage while the children are asleep. And during the carol is when the spider begins to spin the web. So it's really a backdrop to this miracle that happens out of kindness.
Beautiful moment of stagecraft you've set up there.
And ironically, my favorite carol has always been Carol of the Bells, which I had no idea was a Ukrainian melody.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
when I crafted the text, I really tried to go in 4 syllables, so it made a bar of 8.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you have the 8 legs going on with.
Ooh, look at you! Oh my God! All right, yeah. Oh, that's great. Very cool. And setting that.
I remember thinking, I don't know who came up with first, you or I, but I remember thinking, if we're going to write a Christmas opera, we need something extractable that, when you see the Easter parade, it's not Christmas opera, but you have that song, and when you have White Christmas, the movie, everyone likes the song. You need something like that. You can't just write this
through composed,
atonal.
Yeah, but
I mean, truly.
Best song in MAME is the Christmas song.
It's stuck in my head all year round, and it brings me so much joy. Sorry, please continue.
But I mean, that's what I thought that we need. And you wrote that first, but that's what I think a lot of new operas are missing when they try to deal with the holidays. So you don't think of like, you just need something that's not basic, but that everyone can sing, that everyone can relate to, that can be extractable. Because I think this is like our fourth version of this carol. The one that you're going to hear is...
Okay.
Yeah, the one you're going to hear is just the solo voice with the real ensemble. And Minnesota Opera is going to be doing the carol, but like the carol that's in the show is for 4 parts. It's like a choir.
Right, of course. Yeah, that makes sense.
So they're going to do that version of the carol.
Oh, that's lovely.
Because we also figured that if this is done in churches or small ensembles in the community, it's like, hey, we have one chorus scene that can be as large or as small as you want and doesn't require them to be on stage.
Yeah.
So it would be a way to incorporate the community in another way.
Totally.
Waiting for dawn, hope in the sky, wintry sun, icicles cry. Come take my hand, come wear my cloak, frostbite before the midnight stroke. Long day on foot, no horse or sled, past the inn without a bed. Hold your head high, night air is free, warm on the hay, soon we'll be free. Waiting for dawn, hope in the sky, wintry sun, icicles cry. Just you and I, like those before, under a star we adore. Don't be afraid, soon comes the light, gold on our tracks of white. All that we are, all that we share, all that we share together now. Echo our prayer, our prayer. Look, see the dawn, hope in the sky, wintry sun, icicles cry, icicles cry.
So, talking a little bit more about your relationship as collaborators, this is your 3rd opera, is that correct?
I think so. And we did some songs too.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, so how did you two meet?
It's been so long. Actually, I was looking for a composer. I had never written a libretto before, and Clint was recommended to me basically because we were the same age.
All right.
And he's very talented. You guys should get together. And so I looked at some of his music and thought, why not? I really didn't know any other composers. And I just hit him up one day and said, hey, we should meet for coffee and talk about working. And we did. And I presented some ideas to what I think was a skeptical Clint at first, but then, we kind of found a common ground.
Yeah.
It was he proposed the opera that we wrote, When Adonis Calls, and I was working in another opera at the time, and then we met for coffee, at Cave in Hell's Kitchen.
Oh, yeah.
And we were there for a very long time talking about this opera. And I don't know, for me, if something like resonates with me, I just go for it. I just, and John
trust that
always
instinct.
does that. He always like gives me an idea that I love and I might have to go for it.
That is very fortunate.
And he gives me other ideas that I don't like too much.
There's a lot that are on the
Well,
cutting
we
room
don't,
floor.
yeah, those exactly.
But you know when you give me an idea that I'm just like, oh yes, this is something.
That's awesome. So when was that first opera?
It was produced in 2000.
It premiered in 2018, the official premiere.
Gotcha.
And then unfortunately, we had a premiere scheduled during COVID that's been postponed,
Yes.
which is The Copper Queen, which
And
is
it's now going to be a film.
It's going to be a
and-
film, right, that'll be produced by Arizona Opera
Very
in
exciting.
2021.
Very cool. Well, this is amazing. And so, is this your first collaboration with the American Opera Project?
I was a resident artist with their composers in the voice program.
Wonderful. Tell us a little bit about that, because I don't know if people know. I want everyone to know it because it's a phenomenal program.
I mean, this program basically changed my life. I was in college, and then my composition teacher, Dan Sonnenberg, was in the first class. So I remember being a student, and he was going to the American Opera Project, and I kind of helped out at like Symphony Space for one of their concerts.
Oh my God, yeah.
I was like, oh, one day maybe I could get into composers in the voice.
Exactly.
And I just think it's one of the most, and I think they should have a composers in the voice in every city, in every college.
Yeah.
Because in college, they don't teach you how to write for voice. As
a singer, I am very aware.
They just say, oh, this is what a tenor can do. They don't tell you anything about the tessitura. And when in American Opera projects, we had these amazing singers.
Right.
And every week we would write for one. And that wasn't even the best part, writing for a great singer. Every week it was hearing the other artists, composers, their piece too, because you learned more from hearing their pieces.
By dint of the exposure.
And then your piece, because then every singer had something different to say. And I just think, just writing for the voice is something that's so special because it's like a real living human being. And they don't really in the composers of the voice, they don't teach you, this is how you write for the voice.
Right.
You just learn through collaborating with the singers
absolutely.
and the other composers.
It's really the only company I can think of that really does that to this scale and with that kind of support. So speaking, as a singer personally, it's incredible. We need more.
Yes.
So that's wonderful. I mean, so I did interrupt you. American Opera Project, after that, is this the next thing that you have done sort of as in your mature voice, as it were?
I think we did some stuff with the Walt Whitman Project
Very cool.
afterwards. But this is our first time working together with the American Opera Project.
Wonderful. Is there anything else you'd like to say about the show and your vision for, maybe how you'd like to see it, we talked about the animated version of it, but a live version of it, you said it's incredibly modular in a way, which I think is great because it really makes it so accessible for so many different types of budgets and companies. But, say a company like Minnesota or even larger decides that they want to do the show, how would you want to see them spend their resources?
I think that one of the most important things about this is the casting of children. Because I think that one of the reasons why Amal works so perfectly for what it is, it requires a lot of the boys singing Amal, but when it's done well, it breaks your heart.
Yeah.
And we had a lot of discussions about the fact, are these going to be real children or adults? And it's it doesn't have the same poignancy if it's adults. And I think that if kids have never been to the opera before, or the theater, some of them, and they go and see this, I can do that.
Yeah.
I can learn to sing, I can play an instrument, I can get involved in something. And I think that was always really important, that they felt a kinship with these children with it. So whether it's done in a big house or in someone's basement, that it's something that will really appeal to everybody around that time of year.
Totally. I mean, we have discussed, but we're both have a history of performing as children, so we know that it's very possible. You can ask a lot of the kids, but was that sort of in the forefront in composing? The specificity of writing for children's voices is particular.
It is, and I remember I was on the side when John was really adamant this has to be for children. I'm like, well, it's going to be done how am I like? How are we gonna do this? We're not gonna find all these amals or whatever.
Right.
And I remember it's so difficult writing for a child because they're like in this weird place in their voice, and this was really great to hear this because I knew what worked and what didn't work. And I think you were 100% right. This has to be for children.
Yeah, well, Emmanuel and Veronica just knocked it out of the park, so
But
very
they
lucky.
just cemented that this has to be for this. And another thing I came up when I was writing it, I was kind of scared to write for children.
Oh,
Well, I didn't want to give them too much vocal singing.
Okay,
Because the libretto reading that we had went so well, and the kids acted it so well.
right.
So I was like, oh, but I just want
Worried
them to
that
act
adding
it.
that layer,
And I'll underscore it, and they could just speak over it. So remember, I gave you the opening that we saw that we heard. And John was like, no, you need to make them sing more. And he like, I never give you like real. I never get involved with you in your
You
music.
stay in your lanes.
Yeah, but he was like, you need to take these lines and,
Well, I'm a director, and the thing is, also, when you have the kids there, if they start the show with the kids talking, they expect that. But if they start it singing, okay, they start to get used to it
Absolutely.
quicker. And since the opera is, how long is the duration? An hour?
it's like 50 minutes.
50 minutes long. We have
Right.
very finite time to get the
Yeah.
kids into the world. And so I thought, let's just start them singing right away.
Totally.
Get them used to it and go along with them.
Yeah, no, that's a real
And
hook.
all of the, I mean, there's only been 4 children so far, but all of the children who have been involved in both of these versions so
Yeah.
far have loved the parts.
Oh,
They've had a
that's
really good time.
very endearing. And flattering, I'm sure.
It's a relief.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, thank you so much. I know I speak for myself and for Amanda, but we're so excited not only to collaborate with the American Opera Project again and continue this partnership, but to have you as part of it, especially for this holiday season and especially this year. It's been an absolute delight getting to know you both and know your work. And thank you very much.
And thank you so much for having us.
Thank you. This is so fun.
Absolutely.